Hey everyone, I hope this is working okay. My name is Becca and this is my channel and it's my very first live hangout I'm attempting, and I apologize in advance for anything that doesn't go exactly right. I've never done this. I wanted to do something different, so this is Lyme Awareness Month and I wanted to let my friend Tiffany share her story. I met her over a decade ago, and we've been friends in real life all this time. And she's just going to share some information about Lyme disease and her testimony and different things like that. So here it goes to you, Tiffany.
Thank you. Hello. Um, I don't think everything's gonna go perfect because I don't think anything goes perfect in life. So that should take the pressure off. I just want to start with some basic Lyme facts. I know I only ever heard of Lyme disease when my uncle got bitten by a tick and he got the acute form where he almost lost his life. But oddly enough, that's not the form that infects most people. It goes chronic. So, Lyme disease is known as the great mimicker or imitator because it imitates pretty much every autoimmune disorder out there. Lyme mimics most commonly, however, fibromyalgia, MS. Um, for MS, it causes the demyelination of the nerve sheaths, just like you see on an MRI for MS. Rheumatoid arthritis, basically any arthritis. Lyme likes to attack the joints and nerves. Chronic fatigue, ALS, and lupus, and Alzheimer's. Actually, Alzheimer's, 100% of 5 out of 5 brain specimens were tested, and they had Borrelia burgdorferi, which is Lyme disease. So those are the autoimmune disorders that it most commonly mimics. I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia, and then it also mimics psychiatric disorders, most commonly bipolar disorder, because once it gets into the brain, it affects the areas of like emotion regulation and that kind of stuff. Also, memory is a huge one. We call it Lyme brain. It's like brain fog. You know, that tip of the tongue syndrome where you know the word you want to say, you just, for the life of you, cannot find it. I do that a lot. I end up explaining what I'm trying to say, like, the thing with the wings and then airplane. Yeah, that's it. So, 10 facts that I thought were important to be shared is that, first of all, you are 10 times more likely to contract Lyme disease than West Nile virus. Lyme disease has surpassed AIDS as the #1 infectious disease in the United States. The current standard testing is only 50% accurate. Lyme can be spread by any insect that feeds on the blood. Ticks are mainly the only insect that are widely discussed and widely accepted by science. However, they can be spread by mosquitoes and fleas and any little insect that sucks blood. Kids are at the highest risk by being bitten because they are so close to the ground and they play in the leaves and then they play in the grass. So, and then the average doctor knows very little about the disease, and therefore they don't know how to screen or test. And this was actually verified by a doctor that I worked with in the ER because at the beginning I was really sick. I also have a couple co-infections and I felt like I couldn't breathe. Um, Babesia destroys the red blood cells, so that's what was going on. Anyway, he's like, "You are the first one I've ever met that has Babesia." He's like, "I don't know anything about Lyme disease, and I'm gonna let you know it's something that's only taught when you do a specialty like infectious disease." So that was kind of both enlightening but scary at the same time to learn. And if it's not caught early, we're talking about 3 weeks or less. It becomes a chronic infection that causes, basically, it becomes a debilitating disease. The average time it takes for an accurate diagnosis is 5 years. And I'm actually lucky because it did take me 5 years. I know some people, 15 to 20 years is how long it took. So, Lyme disease almost immediately infects the central nervous system. Treatment should be done by a doctor with the label Lyme literate. However, it's best to treat with an ILADS. That's ILADS. You can go to ilads.org or lymedisease.org. And I'm going to share these resources a little later on. And I don't know, Becca, do you have a way to put it on the description of the video?
Yeah, I can do that at the end. I'll go back and edit it and put it in there.
Okay, that'd be good. And to let you know, there's doctors out there that call themselves Lyme literate. Not all things are created equal. So that's why I really stress that it is an ILADS affiliated doctor. And Lyme disease is congenital. It is passed from the mom to the baby, and most women suffer infertility or from miscarriages because the bacteria kills the fetus. And then I wrote down 10 facts, and then I'm like, ooh, I have two more that I want to add. So it's 12 facts. Studies show that Lyme disease is sexually transmitted now. It's because Borrelia is actually a cousin to syphilis. And if you look at them, they're both like little spring looking type bacteria. And Lyme is now reported in every state and is on every continent except Antarctica, because no one's seen Antarctica. So who's to say? But where was I going with that? Oh, because yeah, it is actually an epidemic in the United States. It meets all the criteria for an epidemic, and it's also now a pandemic. Canada and the UK is really stepping up their game in treating Lyme, diagnosing Lyme, and getting the word out for Lyme disease. Actually, my friends from Canada are like, "You don't have resources? Like, what's going on down there?" And I'm like, it's kind of a secret down here, believe it or not. So, and then my favorite resources, and Becca's going to add these in later, is ILADS, ILADS.org. You can find a doctor in your state that treats with the up-to-date criteria and the up-to-date treatment. We're learning that unless you don't respond to low dose immunotherapy, antibiotics are not the best way to treat. It is an infectious disease. However, it has so many facets to it. We just know antibiotics is not really getting to the root. We also know that it is more of a immune disorder than it is an infectious disease, meaning it's actually something wrong with your immune system that's attacking the Lyme, not so much the Lyme being there that's causing the problem. When the immune system does what it should do, when it goes in and says, hey, I don't like you here, I'm going to try to kill you, that's when all your symptoms arise. So the treatment I take keeps that down, keeps my immune system from fighting it. It keeps it just low enough to where I can fight major things like a cold or a pneumonia, but just below par to where I'm still susceptible to, ironically, colds and the flu and stuff. I actually wear a mask around big crowds. But that's the ILADS. I also have my group. It's called Lyme Disease Resources and Support. It's a really good group of people. My one rule is to respect everybody, and I have only had to remove one person, and there's like 550 people. So I'm pretty happy with the group.
Is that group on Facebook or a different website?
It's on Facebook.
Okay.
It'll be by me, Tiffany, and then my last name on there is Lyme Survivor. So that will be my group if you search for it. And then there's LymeDisease.org. And then there's a great documentary that I absolutely love, and I wish it was free all the time. I made my friend Jasper watch it, and he was mad with me about the struggles we face in Lyme with Lyme disease. It's called Under Our Skin, and it's kind of like a play on words about a tick bite. There's a first one. I really like the sequel the best, but you can find it online. I don't know. I haven't dug around. I don't know if it's available on YouTube. I know for a while, Dr. Mercola's site, his website, they were playing it for free, but I looked before we went live and it's no longer streaming free. And then I also like Truth Media on YouTube. They have a really good documentary about Lyme, Connecticut, where the first outbreak started, and Plum Island. That's kind of getting into the political conspiracy type things that surround Lyme, where it came from and why it's so different than the original form of the 1700s. I try to stay away from that just so we stick to the facts, and I don't, deter anybody from wanting to learn about it, you know. So those are my favorite resources. I was gonna say something, and
Were you gonna freestyle?
I was gonna freestyle.
If you freeze up, you can read from your book.
I do have my book bookmarked. So hopefully we can get those on written down. It's easier to just click on it. Oh man, I really wish. See, that's the tip of the tongue syndrome. Like I was going through LymeDisease.org. Oh, I also want to mention, if anybody does join my group or just finds me on Facebook, there is a petition I would like everyone to sign. Actually, I can probably put the link on there too. Eugene Shapiro was just placed on the tick-borne working group, and that's a working group that decides policies for how to treat, how to diagnose Lyme disease. He has been known to testify against Dr. Jones. Dr. Jones was the only pediatrician in the United States that was treating Lyme disease. Every kid that came into his office in a wheelchair went walking out of his office. And he testified against Dr. Jones, and Dr. Jones had his license stripped. I don't know if he ever got it back, but that's also what's happening in this political war against Lyme disease, is that insurances, when they see the word Lyme disease, they investigate the doctors. If the doctors are not treating with the current guideline of a 21-day supply of antibiotics, if they're going above and beyond that, they are putting these people in front of a judge to defend their medical license. And there's been, it's in the documentary Under Our Skin. They show Dr. Jones and his court date. They showed there were so many people there to testify on his behalf, and they only listened to maybe one or two. Actually, I don't even think they took personal testimony, but
If you go to the iLads website, don't you have to give your email because of that? Because the doctors are afraid of that?
yeah. If you go to ilads.org or LymeDisease.org to do a doctor search, you will have to provide your email because they track the IP addresses. You can only do 3 searches in a month, and that is specifically to protect these doctors. Even in my group, I don't want to bash other groups. They're great. but I see people all the time that are like looking for suggestions in this area who has a good doc, and then they'll all put their doctors on there. And I'm like, no, you're going to get them shut down. I don't know if it's as bad. I know I'm lucky. I am super lucky, and we'll talk about this later. How my doctor, one of three, was actually in the same little town I lived in. My office visits for Lyme disease are covered. However, my treatments are not. So I'm actually lucky because he has a patient now that comes to him that can't even, that his visits with his other doctor weren't even covered. So yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because that is one of the struggles with this chronic form of Lyme disease, that A, the term does not exist. Therefore, if the term does not exist, it is not a real disease. And if it is not a real disease, it is not getting treated and insurance is not covering it. You know, the same thing happened with fibromyalgia. Like, just in recent years, you know, they're taking it seriously, like, hey, this is actually a real disease. And now I feel like I know, you know, pretty much everyone I meet has fibromyalgia or knows someone with fibromyalgia, you know, which is also scary because it's like, have you been screened for Lyme disease? And then they're like, oh, yeah, they looked for that. And I'm like, oh, well, if you went with a traditional doctor, your tests are probably false negative. But that's why I'm on here, to let people know.
What's the thing about the test? The regular test, there's so many markers they test for. It's not very many, is it?
Yeah, the testing is weird because no one really set a standard. Um, it just became the norm of what others were doing. So there's something called the Eliza test, ELISA. It detects blood markers, actually antigens in the blood, but after a 30-day exposure, um, you can't find, it's not the same markers. So you got to look deeper with a Western blot. But the ELISA is pretty much for like an acute infection. Like if you're having a fever, you know, basically everything that comes with Lyme disease, it makes you have a fever, kind of like malaria. Like you can die within days if it infects you immediately. Um, but then there's another test. It's called the Western Blot, and this is where the ILADS and Infectious Disease Society of America disagree on the test. They want infectious disease going by the CDC standards, which are out of date. And the CDC spoke out, I think, in March saying, hey, we know our tests are unreliable. We should probably start admitting this. That's basically their statement. They want you to have 5 out of 10 markers. So there's different bands, they call them. And there's 10 different bands, and they look at them. If you have 4.5 bands, like if you're even lucky, first of all, to have one, that's still not good enough. They want 5 out of 10. Then you get a positive test. And then infectious disease says, okay, we'll do the outdated treatment on you. Let's start you on antibiotics. They put these people on antibiotics. They do what's called pulsing them, to where they'll take one antibiotic for, I don't know, let's say 6 weeks. Then they'll have to switch it because the Borrelia is a very intelligent bacteria, and it'll actually like start hiding itself from the bacteria. Like it can adapt. It is very adaptogenic. And that's why it has to like trick the bacteria by hitting it with different antibiotics. However, we know that if you don't get every last little bacterium, which after 5 years, like it is everywhere, it just remates, regrows, and then it becomes what they call post-Lyme syndrome. And that just means like you were treated with antibiotics and you're still sick. But
Isn't there a complication too if you kill them, like they give off toxins, make your symptoms worse?
Yeah. But to go back to the Western blot, that's how the infectious disease reads it. The ILADS reads it as they're realizing certain bands are what's called outer surface protein A and B, and they're realizing that is pretty much indication of Borrelia. Borrelia has that protein. I was lucky. My only band that was positive was band 23. That is to the ILADS. That is a positive result because that is Lyme specific. So I was able to start getting treatment through an ILADS doctor because I had that one band. I mean, like, how lucky is that? Most people don't even get that. But yes, back what you were stating, when you kill the bacteria, it throws off neurotoxins. So wherever it is attacked, from your immune system and starts to die, it doesn't go without a fight. So it's just like, someone kind of like the Wicked Witch of the West when she's melting. It would be as if she was like, I don't know, shooting a gun at people as she's dying because she's not going out without a fight. So that's basically what the Borrelia do. So the surrounding tissues absorb those toxins, and it's very painful. It's called a Herxheimer reaction from the German doctor. You would like him. He's German. Becca's been studying German culture lately. So he's a German doctor. Dr. Herxheimer was the first one that discovered this reaction when they were being treated with antibiotics. So you get worse before you get better. And I mean, if you expect it if you're being treated with antibiotics, the problem is, like for me, I do the LDI therapy. So I'm not trying to kill my Lyme disease. I'm just trying to make my immune system like it. So if I have to take a short course of antibiotics, like I have a surgery coming up for skin removal. I know some doctors do a prophylactic antibiotic. That's going to start killing my Lyme, and it's not going to be happy. And then also, I've taken there's CBD oils out there, and cannabinoids are actually a very potent antioxidant, and it will also destroy the Borrelia. When I started the Blue Dream CBD oil that you can get like online, the CBDs were so high that I told Mitch, I'm like, I actually feel worse. And at the time, I didn't put two and two together. I was like, I just don't think the CBD is going to work for me. I think had I waited until the reaction was over, I would have started feeling better. But that's just something we always have to be careful of, because it's really hard to tell between a flare up. If you have any chronic condition, you know what a flare up is. A period where you kind of have the wind knocked out of your sail for a little bit, flare up of symptoms. And it's like, is this a flare or is this a Herxheimer reaction? Or am I getting sick? Or, you got to sit down and ask 20 questions. Did I eat something that I shouldn't have? Did I react with, this person had a Scentsy on? And let me tell you, I used to love Scentsies. I had a whole drawer full of wax melts, and now I can't even walk down the aisle. So whenever I visit family, I make sure, well, they don't even have to ask. Like if I say we're going to stop over, they text back, the Scentsie's off. So they know. Before I had my treatment for my allergies, because Lyme disease with it can activate this syndrome called mast cell activation syndrome, which basically you have an overproduction of cytokines, which are the inflammatory I don't know exactly what the term is, but it's your inflammatory chemical. So you basically become allergic to everything. I've never been allergic to anything really except dairy, and I could still eat it. And then after in 2017, when I became bedridden, um, I couldn't even handle the chlorine in my water without getting a rash. So I ended up doing the elimination diet for a while, where you eliminate all the most common allergens, nuts, dairy, gluten. I mean, I felt great on it, but there was like three things I was eating. But basically, the diet and lifestyle alone has, I think, helped me the most. I mean, aside from God, um, just, I mean, it supports the immune system when you're not feeding it all this extra crap. And actually, my doctor he calls it wellness or steps to wellness, a whole list of what you need to do. You need to quit smoking. You need to get good air filters. You need to get filtered water. I mean, by the time I had seen them, I was already doing pretty much all of it, even the infrared sauna, because I was at the point my doctors were going to send me to a psychiatrist, which is pretty much what most Lyme patients have had to deal with, being told it's all in their head because, all your tests are normal. So I just started, and this leads into God and divine intervention. I was going through an email, and normally I would just delete this email because I hadn't bought anything from this. Um, is like an organic company. But at the bottom it said, do you feel sick? Do you feel tired? Are you not getting any better? And I figured, well, what the hell? I'm off work on an FMLA. Let's see if this might be the answer. In like 2 minutes in, when they started talking about Lyme disease, the symptoms of it, something in me said, holy crap, I have Lyme disease. Like I just knew.
And
And I
you had been misdiagnosed a lot, hadn't you? You were tested for MS, and what else was it?
I I wasn't really tested for fibro. They used to do this outdated test where they stick needles in you and do voltage. A lot of doctors now will do a trigger point test, touch sensitive, areas, kind of like your acupressure points. If they're tender and you have nerve pain, they're like you have fibromyalgia. But I do have fibromyalgia because it just means widespread pain. But I'm lucky because I know it's caused by the Lyme disease. That was one of the first things that happened. Like I started getting sick about 5 years ago, 6 months into Mitch and I getting together in 2013, 6 months after our engagement. Um, so that just tells you what a great guy he is. Like he took this all on. He could have bailed. And then last January, he was cutting up my meat and feeding me because, I couldn't get my hands to work. But yeah, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome. I had had insomnia for years. I worked third shift. I just thought it was, my schedule messed up. It went from not being able to sleep to not being able to wake up. Um,
Did you think at one point that you had schizophrenia too, right?
oh my gosh, 2016 was the worst year for symptoms. I started to get sick, in 2013. It started with a pinch in my back. And, we chased that for a while with an MRI. I had a bulge disc that was compressing or irritating the nerve. It wasn't really doing anything that needed surgical intervention. So they're like, you would be a good candidate, however, for a pain stimulator or a spinal cord stimulator. It's like an implanted TENS unit. And, then I'm like, whatever, if it gets me back to work, do it. Worst decision I ever made. Not because it doesn't help, but that gave the bacteria a direct route into my spine. And it wasn't long after that. I mean, you got to talk about the huge upset from my immune system, first of all, for the surgery. I was already so sick. But yeah, that's when my depression got worse. Uh, it was weird because I knew I didn't have schizophrenia because it wasn't like my uncles. And I hate to say it because I know one person, this is what it's supposed to look like, but he was out of touch with reality. Um, I started hearing, like, I think I was on the phone with you or texting you that I heard like a broadcast of like a football game,
Yeah,
and,
I remember that.
and the TV was off, and I knew I should not be hearing it. Um, I was highly stressed at the time, but I had no radio in my car, and I was driving to work, and I heard music, and uh, yeah, so I think that's when it started infecting my brain, and I didn't know it. But it just continued to get worse psychologically for me, physically for me. I started having leg and foot pain. They're like, oh, it's diabetic neuropathy. Oh, it's plantar fasciitis. It ended up being Bartonella. It's Bartonella's cat scratch fever. That's one of the 6 co-infections that come with Lyme. There's actually 6. I should probably mention them. Lyme doesn't come by itself. If it does, then I'd like to meet the person that only has Borrelia. um, he likes to bring his friends. There's up to 6 that we know about. There could be more. Bartonella, that is cat scratch fever. I just read an article too that they're linking that to an adult onset schizophrenia. There's Babesia, which is a malaria like infection. You get air hunger with that. I had never experienced such such a time where I was out of breath. It was scary because I knew it wasn't like an asthma attack. I don't have any like lung issues that where I needed like an inhaler or anything. Even with a CPAP machine, I'm like, I cannot breathe. And it's because my red blood cells, although they weren't being destroyed, they were being warped and they couldn't hold oxygen. And I was very pale in 2017. Um, the 2 pictures I took, I was like white as a ghost. So that's Babesia. There's Ehrlichia, Anaplasma, Mycoplasma, Rickettsia, which is the most common form in animals. I actually, this is how, this is a perfect example of how doctors just don't know about it, right? I was sent to a general surgeon to check out an area from my Lyme doctor that he thought might have to be removed. And he was asking what all I have, and I was like, "Oh, I also have Lyme disease." He's like, "Are you talking about like rickettsia? Like that's in dogs?" I'm like, "Did he seriously just ask me that?" Like, yes, I I am a dog. Like that is just the most insane question I think I've ever been asked by a healthcare professional. If I thought I had a disease that's only found in animals. But it's not apparently found just in animals. You can get rickettsia. And then there's Rocky Mountain spotted fever, and my heart goes out to anybody who's fighting that. Uh, I have a good friend. She is also an advocate, and she's been fighting Rocky Mountain spotted fever, and it has been such a battle. She has the PICC line that goes into her heart, has to give herself antibiotics. I mean, sometimes the LDI treatment, it just doesn't work for some people, and antibiotics are the only way. And for her, that was the case. And um, I just feel so blessed because I think she's been in the hospital more than she's been out of, and she has 2 kids. And here I am, like feeling better each day. And this is probably the best year I've experienced with Lyme disease because I have my treatments for all my allergies, chemical, environmental, food, and then for the Lyme disease. So I'm able to get out of my house. I was allergic. People are like, "What are you allergic to?" I'm like, "Air." Like just anything. I was actually allergic to my own dogs. I couldn't have my own dog brush up against me.
So what was this like when it was at your worst? You said you were bedridden. What like can you kind of describe what that was like? Because a lot of people they don't even really know what Lyme disease is.
Right. Uh, I just know that year, that's when I saw the foot doctor. I could hardly walk on my feet. They hurt so bad. I remember telling people I literally feel like I'm going to keel over and die. Like when I would go into work, um I would park. I would get to work like 10, 15 minutes early. I would sleep until the last minute I had to go in to clock in. Like there was no amount of sleep that could restore my energy. And I was a newly diagnosed diabetic. What ended up happening was the infection. I mean, no one caught the infection, so my pancreas was working hard trying to, when your blood sugar does go up when you have an infection. And I wasn't eating the best, like refined carbohydrates were my best friend. So my pancreas completely shut down. So I finally get out of the hospital, get back to work. I'm a respiratory therapist, so we don't get like set lunch hours. And I was working third shift, and sometimes crap hits the fan, and you only have a couple therapists on. It was 2 nights where I didn't get a break. I didn't get a lunch, in 12 hours. And that next day, I could not, like, I could barely move. I just felt like I weighed 5,000 pounds. And like in my mind, I was saying, okay, I'm going to get up. Okay, I'm going to go up, get up. And it felt like I was paralyzed. I knew I wasn't paralyzed, but I just couldn't move. Like my body was done. And I texted my mom. I was at my house, and I live next door to my parents. She came over. She had to help me, like, I don't even know how many. It was a small house. It had to be just like maybe 7 feet to the bathroom. She had like help take me there and back. So we knew something wasn't right. And she I went on an FMLA from work, obviously. And the only meal I was getting a day was what she was bringing over for me. I was just I was just sick. Um, I felt nauseous. I had no appetite. I was tired, and I just slept most of the time. I couldn't sleep at night. About 10 o'clock would hit at night, and my body would not sleep. I took and this isn't safe, and I'm telling everyone out here, do not do this. I'm not in any way promoting this, but I would take like 5 Benadryl. I had some old gabapentin. I would take anything I had to try to like snow me. And I would only sleep 3 hours after doing all that. And that was just insane because like by 11 o'clock, I'm like, I'm ready for bed, and then I'll get up at 7, and I'm like, oh, I had a nice night's sleep.
Wasn't there a reason for that that the Lyme bacteria become active at night, keep you awake?
Yeah, the Lyme come out at night to feed. They also come out at um, on full moons, sometimes new moons, because every 4 weeks they come out to mate. So you'll have a flare up. But at night, about when at nightfall, they come out to feed. I don't know exactly what all it entails, but I do know they unscrew because they look like a corkscrew. They'll unscrew from wherever they are, and that could be your eyeballs, it could be your skin, your bone, your nerves, your brain. And then when they're done, by morning, they'll drill back in. That's how they mate, but I don't know exactly what they do to feed. But when they are active, your body knows, and it's I'm losing it.
You
It's the
said it It triggers the fight or flight
Yeah,
reaction.
yes. It's a panic response. Like your body is panicked. And they also see this with parasites. You'll start grinding your teeth at night. Um, I never used to. And that year, I was doing it so bad I was biting my tongue. But it elicits that fight or flight response. So your body will not physically be able to sleep because it's running on adrenaline. And it would like 6 or 7 o'clock when sunrise started. I was finally able to get some sleep, just a few hours at a time, but I lived on naps.
That happened to me too with the rosacea because the Demodex mites made at night, so I had the same thing going on with that.
I think just in general, it must be like a bacteria type thing, because when they talk about parasites mating and eliciting these responses, that's actually another layer. If Lyme patients aren't getting better, they start looking into parasites that could also be making you sick.
A
But
lot of Oh, sorry. A lot of this is thought to be related, like rosacea and Lyme and Morgellons, I've heard.
oh yeah, Morgellons, um, that's been prevalent with people with Lyme. Um, for some reason, it's Lyme disease and mold. A lot of people have mold exposure, and honestly, mold is probably up and coming for chronic illness. Like a lot of chronic disease is stemming from mold. And I know people think like black mold, and it doesn't even have to be that. Did you know peanuts are horrible for you because their shells get moldy? I didn't know that. They're riddled with mold, apparently.
Wow, I didn't know that either. I love peanut butter.
You know, I have an addiction to it, but yeah. And it's also not good for your thyroid. It depletes your T3. But yeah, just like there's mold in your foods and stuff. So that's just an added layer. I've known people that had to move out of their houses because they were just couldn't handle them. But I mean, I don't know what all my LDI targets. He said each one targets like four. I don't know if it was 4 million or it was quite a bit of triggers. So my immune system should not be reacting to much. Oddly enough, it still does. However, they say with each round of treatment, it'll get like I don't want to say stronger, but more effective. And I've only had a couple rounds of my allergy stuff, so I'm hoping by then, because my face still looks reddened, and that might just be like growing up. I always had just right here some rosacea. I didn't have your form of rosacea where it I could feel it eating off my face.
Right.
Thank God. And that's why when you said you had rosacea, I'm like, I have rosacea. Why do you have to have blackout curtains? I don't understand what's going on. I'm gonna take a drink of water.
When you come back, did you want to tell about that really strange instance where, like, you thought you were in a different year than you were, and you were asking about work and stuff?
Yeah, Mitch's infamous orientation screening. Oh my goodness. So when I have a flare up or a Herxheimer reaction, um, I get crazy. Like it's basically like brain inflammation. So I had gotten upset and went off for a walk. I had gotten lost and I was even like but a block away, but I didn't know how to get back. And Mitch is like, I'm just going to put her in her sauna and let her sweat some of this out. Maybe that'll help. And it did. And thankfully he did. But when I was coming out of it, I guess when he first put me in there, I said, "Do I work tonight?" And he's like, no, you haven't worked for like over a year. But he's like, do you know where you're at? I'm like, yeah, I'm in our home. He's like, do you know that we're divorced? And I did it. I was like, no. And I started crying because that's sad. And he's like, what did he say? Do you know you don't have a job? Do you
And
know?
the dog died.
Yeah, do you know? Yeah, do you know that your dog died? And I'm like, I'm just like traumatized at this point. I give him hell every time. Like, that's not the best. You're supposed to say, do you know who the president is? Do you know what year it is? Not, hey, do you know about the most hurtful time of your life? But yeah, that was, I felt like, I don't know, I felt like I was once I started to come out and get back into, the year we were in, I felt like I was in like a parallel timeline. Like I really did feel like it was Cinco de Mayo 2015. However, it's still whatever year this is. And I get that from time to time. And I know I text you when I have it, when I have a flare up, and I'm like, I feel like this is 2006, but it's also 2019. Like, I just don't feel like it's just hard to explain. It's just, I don't see, I don't physically see things from the past. I feel like I could be in the past. Like, I feel like I could be at home in 2006 mowing the grass in my childhood when I'm out mowing the grass here. I don't know, just some type of weird brain thing. I don't think many people know about that. So if any of my family and friends are tuning in, yeah, I'm crazy.
You're not crazy, you're just a little unwell.
Oh, you're punny. You are punny. So, I mean, yes, I was at my sickest in 2017, but ultimately it did bring me closer to God. Um, I was angry at him for a while, and I don't think you can, have true faith without some type of atheism along the way. So that I was angry at him. I didn't understand, you know, I was so excited, right? Because I hated that it was just fibromyalgia because I knew it was something more. And then I was like, yes, it's Lyme disease. And I was thinking it was the form my uncle had, and I was going to be on antibiotics and I was going to be cured. And it's like, no, you don't have that form. You have a form that no one knows about, no one talks about, and every doctor is going to scoff at you and say, why do you think you have that? It was, and it still is at times frustrating. I've learned to know to not lead with Lyme disease. Um, and I've learned that it's just not going to be um, something I can openly talk about because, for all intents and purposes, my disease doesn't exist, the chronic form at least. And I don't have the 5 out of 10 markers to be reported to the CDC. So I both have Lyme disease and don't have Lyme disease on my diagnoses simultaneously. Like, how should that be possible?
You've had some divine interventions along the way, like with your doctor and different things. Did you want to talk about that?
No, I just want to freestyle.
Okay, well, you can read from your book if you freeze up.
uh, that clip was on ridiculousness, and it made me happy. Uh, yeah, so I started digging around, trying to find, someone who could treat Lyme disease. Found the iLads organization. There's 3 in the state. I went to Lakewood to be tested, and he, I don't know how to he like I don't want to say didn't believe me, but played it down. He's like, I really think it's just sleep apnea. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, I'm a respiratory therapist. I'm not saying I know everything, but a lot of my symptoms I was having, sleep apnea cannot explain it. So I ended up testing positive. So I felt good when he had to call me and say, hey, okay, you're right. It is Lyme. But he didn't treat it. So I had to find a doctor that would treat it. And I don't want to give out too much information, trying to keep his name safe. If you private message me on Facebook or get a hold of me, I will certainly give you their information. But I was living in a very small town near where Becky lives. Sorry, but it's Becca. She hates to be called Becky. I tease her and I call her Becky all the time, and it just comes out. Um, yeah, he lived he lived in my town, and it took a couple months to get in to see him, but I am so glad I did. And the thing I love about this doctor is he's Christian and not afraid to be Christian. And I know some are like, so what? That's huge. I worked in healthcare. Like, you are not supposed to bring religion to your job because it turns people off. And when he was explaining it to me, he's like, when God made us, with him and all his infinite wisdom, he designed us like this. And I'm like, I love you. I didn't say that, but I'm like, yay. So I have a really close relationship with him. He's probably, I feel like I'm biased. Yes, he's my favorite doctor because he gave me my life back, but also because he leaves no turn, or he leaves no stone unturned
And
to.
he has Lyme disease too, right?
Yes, he does. It became a kind of like his passion, his calling to do it. He honestly, he was a family practitioner. Now he's only seeing people for specialty illnesses. He will take people with autoimmune disorders in that, because he also treats with lifestyle changes, and he does stool testing for parasites. He's very like a functional medical doctor in that regards. But he also has Lyme disease, and he flat out told me, our disease doesn't exist. Be prepared to not lead with it. And it's just sad that a doctor has to tell you that. Be like, hey, you have this, but don't tell other practitioners. And he did speak up for me. I remember I called him so upset for the general surgeon that I got sent to, mocking me for having the Lyme disease that dogs have. And he did call that doctor and explain to him, that it does exist, and this patient has it. So he his office, I swear to you, they those people deserve, I don't even know, deserve everything, because they deal with people like me who are about to throw in the towel, that are crazy, that have emotional dysregulation. Just looking in my past messages to the office, they're just like, please hang in there, Tiffany. And I wanted to quit because with LDI, you have to do rounds and rounds to find your effective dose. And I just wanted to quit because I'm impatient and I wasn't feeling well fast enough, that type of thing. And I couldn't see the light at the end of the tunnel that all these nurses were telling me was there. And I honestly think some of the nurses have Lyme disease too. Um, but then I found it, and I can't thank God enough for having this doctor so close in my life. That's why when I tell people you need to go see this doctor, I'm not just suggesting another doctor out of the yellow book. I'm saying this guy is going to follow you. He's going to care about you. He is going to not only look at your chart, he's going to look at your body. And not, that sounds wrong, but that's how you look for Lyme disease too. There's, I don't know if you'd be able to see it. Can you see red dots at all?
Yeah, kind of now.
Those That's what babesia looks like. It leaves those. They're called cherry angiomas. It's from capillaries bursting under the skin, and I have red dots all over. But usually, oddly enough, like especially over the left breast in women. I don't know why, but I always had one there. Like when I had a low cut shirt.
Were you gonna show us? No, I'm kidding.
It's not that kind of show. Um, but yeah, I've always had those, and I've asked like, "What is this?" And they're just like, "I don't know, a mole." I'm like, "Okay." uh, you've been to doctors that have had not so much good advice.
Um, when I was really sick, I found like when you have something where you feel all alone, you find that nobody understands, nobody's there for you like you need them to be. And that's when I really became close to God because He was the only one who was there for me. Did you experience that too?
I did. Jesus became my best friend. About the time, a little before I became bedridden, I was going down a very bad path with this guy we'll just call George. That's not his real name, but he's online on YouTube saying that, Jesus was a mystic and basically pulling people away from Christianity. And I got sucked in and brainwashed, and he played on my vulnerability. So I was really lost spiritually. I was following like the Celtic gods for a while. It didn't feel as comforting as it used to. I felt so much better when I would pray, like just a lift weight, off of me. But then I felt like I had to like use crystals to pray, or, I even looked into spells, which I'm glad I didn't dabble with. I know there's like light spells, which are good spells, but whatever. Um, and then I started thinking, I was like, my grandma was a devout Christian woman, and I saw her in my dreams, back. She passed when I was 6. I would see her in my dreams all the time from the other side. So obviously, Jesus is the way, or one of the ways. Like, he's not bad. This guy made it seem like you say the name, and he even had me so afraid of crosses. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah, that caused a rift in our friendship. Yeah.
Yeah, because I even was scared to buy you a cross for Christmas, but I did, and it's just insane. But I was like, wait a minute. I have a lot of family that are preachers and this and that. And then I started seeing the hypocrisy in what he was saying. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to read it for myself, because I didn't do that. I didn't read it for myself. I've always taken other people's word for the word, and you can't do that. And when I started reading for myself, I found so many contradictions to what he was saying. And I'm like, man, if I would have just read this, I wouldn't have gotten so far deep. So that was a bad time. But then I started, getting Jesus back into my life. And my intuition was just strengthened. Like, I really did feel like I had, God back on my side. And like with you do something and you're like, I don't even know why I did it. But then like when you read something and you find out, oh, that's actually really good for you.
Yeah, the Bible says that God is our physician, the great physician, and I feel like the Holy Spirit guides us and helps us, like He makes us a partner in our healing sometimes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's just like a ritual now where I pray when I get up, I pray when I go to bed. I'll feel I'll feel sometimes like I need to pray somebody, or someone pops in my head, and they'll be like, "Hey, I was just thinking about you." And not to sound cocky, but I'm like, "Yeah, I figured," like I just had that feeling. But I think that feeling just really does strengthen when you acknowledge that it's God talking to you. You know, don't take the credit, be like, oh, I'm psychic. I mean, now I just see signs all the time and in numbers. And I wouldn't be here without him because I'm going to tell you something. I was so in the dark. The depression was really bad. My last birthday, not this past one, but my birthday in 2018, I was at the rescue center for suicidal ideation because I'm like, why live another year? I was in excruciating pain because I started getting sick with back pain at 26 years old during an opioid crisis. So let me tell you how the ER felt about that. I was basically just labeled a seeker. So they just won't prescribe much at all. It kind of like scared doctors into prescribing anything. And that is something now that they're realizing that they've done. But I was in so much pain. The pain was causing depression, and the depression was causing pain. And I was just in a vicious cycle. And there were a couple times where I actually did grab the pill bottle and I heard, you know, no, don't do it. I honestly don't know exactly what it was, but, God overcame. Like at that moment, I was thinking about everybody that would be hurt if I actually did it. And I saw my mom's face and I'm like, I just can't do that to her. So I didn't, thankfully. But I'm going to tell you something. I don't know if I ever told you this. It was one night I was I was very angry. I almost felt possessed, but I went to the bathroom, right? And I'm like, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to effing do it. And I didn't. I went back to the bedroom and I thought I saw something, like a dark shadow. Mitch jumped and I said, why did you just jump? He's like, I'm afraid to say. I'm like, I want you to say because, I had seen something. He's like, I just saw like a black shadow thing right in front of my face. And I was like, turn on the light. And, like, I'm not saying it was the devil. I'm not saying it was a demon, but it was just odd that I had been overcome by grief and anger and I wanted to kill myself. And when I come back into the bedroom, we're seeing this black thing, you know?
Yeah, I think Satan definitely he'll play on any vulnerability we have, and when we're at our lowest, that's when he thinks he has his chance to come in, and probably the best thing for him would be if we would die not believing.
And it's true. Like since I've been in a better place and, you know, make a point to stay close with God, like we haven't had activity, and when company comes over, I pray for, nothing to enter my home. But I haven't, dealt with anything like that since I was depressed like that. And from what people have said, he wants you to be depressed. Like he wants you to be in like this low vibrational state because that's where he thrives. And when we're close to God and on this happy, frequency, he can't penetrate us. So I'm just so thankful because that was just, it still freaks me out to think about it because that night I turned on all the lights and I didn't even want to go to sleep. But the all of 2017, I just felt like I was having some type of spiritual awakening. I was waking up at a certain time every night. Um, I was receiving what I felt were like signs. Uh, I can't really remember them now, sadly, but during that dark, depressive time, I do remember a dream I had. It was my mom. She was like in this brightest of bright white light that you could never even replicate. And I said, Mom, I'm just I'm so lost. What do I do? And she said, it's not your time yet. You have much more to do. And it's one of those dreams where you wake up and it just sticks with you all day, And I told Mitch, and he's like, I said, but why would it be my mom? Like she was an angel. Is she gonna die? He's like, you want to know why it was your mom? He's like, because she is the only person on this earth that you will actually listen to. I'm like, it's true. It's true. So, I had a dream like that. I remember having a dream where I found my grandma walking along, and I said, Grandma, I said, please tell me what to do. I don't know what to do. Please tell me what to do. And she said, I love you. I cannot tell you that. Oh, and that dream sticks with me too. So I think it's easier for, spirits and our angelic choir, if you will, to speak to us when we're unconscious, because we don't have the barrier of fear or anything like that up. I think I'm to a point now, I I can like feel it or feel it in my gut to where I don't really necessarily have to have a dream anymore because I'm so open to it.
Did you find the same thing I did? Like, you talked about that bitterness at the beginning, which I had the same thing when I got really sick, but then I found that when I got closer to God, then I began to focus more on gratitude and praise, and that's really when my healing took off, was with that attitude. Did you find that too with yourself?
I did. I mean, it still has been a struggle. Um, I started the group first of all. First of all, um, because I'm like, all this is going on. This is an epidemic in this country. No one's talking about it. I'm going to try to do something. So the easiest thing for me to do was start a Facebook group. And that's where I started the advocacy for it. But I realized once I accepted, I don't know how to explain it. A lot of people, they're still mad at the Lyme. They say, I hate the Lyme. I'm not saying I love it, but it wasn't until I like really accepted that the Lyme is part of me. So if I hate the Lyme, I hate myself. The Lyme doesn't want to be there. It's If it's from a black leg tick, um, that's also known as a deer tick, it wants to be inside of a deer. So it doesn't want to be here just as much as I don't want it to be here. And when I stopped being so angry, my healing helped. And I really do want to stress that mental health is still important. And when your doctors suggest you see a psychiatrist, they're not calling you crazy. I had old trauma that I never worked through, and trauma is stored in the cell. It puts up blocks. It's just not good for your health. So the psyche has a lot to do with healing, and just doing that, you know, forgiving myself for things, forgiving other people for things, just being a nicer person. I have like this bad version of myself. She's very angry, she's very critical. She has controlled me since 15 years old. I call her Ursula. And she was my forefront. You knew her at when in my 20s when I was so mean to you all the time.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So yeah, just calming her down through seeing a counselor and a psychiatrist. And it wasn't until I talked to the psychiatrist that I realized that my pain doctor wasn't calling me crazy either. She explained it to me better. Well, he didn't even try to explain it to me at all. He just said, go see a psychiatrist for pain. She said the nerves for depression and anxiety also along the same pathway, pain runs along. Like they share the same pathway. So that's why having good emotional well being will help pain. Because I can tell you when I'm upset, like emotionally, my pain will worsen. And I think a lot of people can say that.
I think that's one reason why the Bible talks so much about giving praise. Like, it's not that God hasn't needs us to feed his ego, it's because it's actually good for us, even physically.
Yeah, when you gratitude. I mean, gratitude, gratitude, gratitude. Um, that's one of the things we were taught in DBT therapy, even with my counselor. It helps retrain the brain when you use gratitude. And it really does. Like if you are in a bad mood and then you just take out a piece of paper and you're like, I'm going to write everything I'm thankful for, it just like switches the script around, kind of like when you put on a comedy. At least it does for me.
Yeah,
And
that happens with me too.
so, I mean, I have a little journal with John 3:16 on it that I put my gratitudes in. I put my prayers for people in, and I it's been tough because about the time I started getting sick, my cousin um had found out she had leukemia, and it was pretty aggressive. I mean, they didn't find out until she had to be hospitalized, and they had to pump blood into her, and then they're like, "Oh, you have a leukemia that you never knew about." Um, it's gonna sound super insensitive, but in the Lyme community, we actually say we would rather have cancer. I know that's horrible, but it's because you either get better from it or you die from it. The worst thing about chronic Lyme disease is it's not going to kill you. The complications from it will kill you, kind of like diabetes. You'll get the kidney failure, you'll get skin infections. That kind of stuff will kill you. Having diabetes alone isn't going to kill you. So, the waxing and waning of symptoms, they're like, I'd rather either try to kill it or, yeah, I'd rather try to go into remission or I'd rather die. And I was totally in that mind frame when I began my journey to wellness. And I was so jealous. And it's still emotions I'm working through. And I have every right to be jealous, but I still don't like that I was jealous of my cousin who just passed, by the way. This is why it's been on my mind a lot. And I was like, oh my God, like, because I knew she was either going to get better or she wasn't. And I hadn't even been in a place to fathom what being this healthy right now would feel like if it was even an opportunity, because I was still bedridden myself. And I was like, she's going to the Cleveland Clinic. She has a disease that people know about, and she has resources. Like I was jealous about that. I don't want to say I was jealous that she had cancer. I think I was more jealous of the fact that you go the sympathy, first of all, from doctors when you say I have leukemia, um, the care that's covered by her insurance, everything that goes into having a leukemia. And then to, what, 1.5 years later, because she's been battling it for 17 months. So 17 months later, which is a very short time. People ask me all the time, how are you so well so fast? And I'm like, first of all, God, he leads me to what I need, what I don't need. And, secondly, diet and lifestyle. You got to detox. You got to watch what you put in your body. Your body's already trying its best to keep Lyme at bay. It doesn't need all this extra crap on top of it. But I think back even today, like we just had her memorial service a couple days ago. She passed on the day my treatment was due. And I know that's not like a huge, yes, it's a coincidence, but to me, it just has so much meaning. Like, here I am still on earth getting my shot at life when I thought she had the better shot at life. It's just kind of like, I don't even know how to explain it. Does that even make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, I can understand what you mean. It's like when I came to the point where I tried to take my life, obviously it didn't work, but I think now, like in that moment, I took the pills. If I could have seen what kind of life was ahead of me, I couldn't even imagine it then. I just couldn't see anything but the pain I was in and no hope for it to end. And it's just amazing what God has done since then in my life.
And that was the other thing, like, not to make it a self centered thing when I was at the memorial service, but I was looking around and I'm like, I was so mad at God for letting her have the more manageable disease that could have had a cure, right? But this could have been me. Like, that could have been me in the urn, Like, thank God he knew I was angry. Thank him he knew I was angry, and that it was just raw emotion. Um, he always, he never ceases to amaze me. And so now here I'm sitting, I'm going to live a full life. I'm going to continue to get better. Unfortunately, she did pass. There was nothing they could do. It was so aggressive. And then at the same point, I'm like, why me? However, I keep wanting to pull away from Lyme disease because I feel like I get so self-centered into the one disease. And every time I do, I get pulled back in. Last time I wanted to get off Facebook completely. And one of my admins said, we really appreciate you here on the group. You're the only one that can read medical research because I took a class in college, how to read actual medical journals and research. So I'm like, yeah, I don't want to really just leave these people. And then even a couple days ago, I was like, maybe I should, start raising awareness for leukemia that took my cousin. And no joke, today in Kroger, my cashier's name was Angel. And I was wearing my mask, and the bagger said, let me ask you, heart transplant or lung transplant? And it doesn't even really bother me much anymore because I've realized every person that asks about my mask is an opportunity to say the word Lyme disease. So it's spreading awareness that way too. And I said, neither. It's actually Lyme disease. I don't have an immune system. And then he's like, oh, my grandpa had to wear a mask for his lung transplant. And he's like, it was just so sweet. I didn't know her name was Angel until I was about to walk, past and go out to the car. But he's like, I didn't have an immune system growing up as a kid. He's like, just hang in there. Just keep fighting. And it was just so sweet and heart touching. Like, I was very cranky today. And I'm like, okay, my cashier's name is Angel. He also has a weakened immune system. I'm supposed to be doing this hangout with Becca. Like, I obviously need to do this hangout. So it's just one of those moments where you're like, okay, God, I get your sign.
Do you have like a favorite Bible verse or part of the Bible that you kind of went to when you were having hard times or still go to?
I don't really, gosh, I mean, I have a lot of favorites. I tend to go more towards New Testament. Obviously, it has my main man, Jesus, in there. I like John's scriptures. My favorite quote is John 3:16, but I do in my book, I have written down every verse that mentions healing, and I will reference that. There's some in Luke, Mark, all the gospels about healing. There's even, I've been reading the Old Testament. There's the prophets. Elijah did healing, like Jesus did. That's why people thought Jesus was Elijah, when he came onto the scene. But I don't know. I don't really honestly, it's weird because I'll get like just a feeling to read a certain, like the other day I felt like reading Proverbs. And what are you doing? Quit. My dog's senile and she just jumped up and I don't know why. But I was reading Proverbs, and that's a really beautiful book to read if you ever need like to stay on the course. I like what they say in there about trusting God and His wisdom. Of Ecclesiastes. I don't recommend that if you're a little in a bad mood, but who's to say?
Well, it's something you can relate to when you're really depressed.
That is true. And that's what I like about the Bible too. Like they don't it's not all good. It's not like all these people are happy go lucky, just yay Jesus. Like Job, he got handed a pretty hard deal there. That's what I like about the Bible too. My favorite part about the Bible is no matter how hard his people have fallen or how much they have sinned, as soon as they ask God, to guide them again, there he is, like a parent on earth, like he is the ultimate father, that is going to be with his kid no matter what. And I am just so thankful. Like when I went on that dark path with George, that because of Jesus, I was able to come back to God, you know, and I felt so guilty for so long. And, in my heart, I heard, child, you are forgiven. It's like, it's that simple, like he's over it, right? It was only me beating myself up.
Do you
And then,
feel like Oh, sorry.
no, go ahead.
Do you feel like your spiritual life would be a lot different if you had never gone through all of this?
Yeah. I was so materialistic. Um, if I even had time for friends, I didn't want to hang out with them, like I'll catch you later. I live to work. I mean, we all do, you need to pay the bills and stuff, but I mean, I defined myself by my career. I was a career woman. I was climbing the ladder. I flourished at every job. I just had to keep changing jobs. That was easier for me to keep up physically. Um, I was. It wasn't until I got sick that I realized I was alone in a house with no family around, no friends around, and divorced from the one man who had shown me unconditional love because of my own grief and bitterness. I had projected it onto everyone in my life. I blamed them for everything. And it gave me time to reflect on my life, where I went wrong, where I could have done better. I started apologizing to people that deserved apologies, and God put me in connection with the people that I think I was meant to be in connection with, like my good friend Jasper. He and I are on the same page, religiously. My friend Joe was back in my life who I had thrown out. It's just pretty much everybody. Like, I was not a nice person. I tell my therapist that. She's like, you always say you weren't a good person. Were you not a good person, or did you just not have the skills? I was like, no, I just wasn't a good person. Thanks for trying, but no, I wasn't very nice. But I still look at myself now because I am the person who I've always wanted to be. I'm comfortable in my own skin for the most part. I pretty much had borderline personality disorder. I just acted the way that was going to make me socially acceptable. And now I don't care. Like, I feel like people in my life now that have been in my life previously, they just think I've become like this holy roller. And it's like, no, I've always been Christian. I've just always been afraid to mention it to you because I know it's not popular. And now I don't care. Like now it's on my walls and I I tell them I'll pray for you. Like I'm Christian and proud. Um I'm just glad God has given me the confidence to be who I have always wanted to be, to say no to things, to have my own mind about things. I just I would not be I wouldn't be happy if this hadn't happened. Like no, I don't want Lyme disease. I don't want any sickness. But that's what it took to get my life on track, not just physically and eating well and that kind of stuff, but emotionally. I spend more time now with family and friends than I ever would have. And it's not just because I don't have a job. It's like I genuinely want people in my life. I genuinely want to know how your day was. Um, yeah, I feel like a different person. I really do. It's kind of like looking back, like who was that person? That's just insane. Like, and I don't have much memory of the past 5 years, and beyond that, it's a blur, and obviously there's things I've said that upset people, but the worst thing is I don't remember saying them. And I do take blame for it because I'm like, yeah, that does sound pretty rude. That I probably did say that. But I can't imagine saying such harsh things. Like, I cut Mitch deep, on some of the stuff I've said. And it'll come back in a memory randomly. And I'm like, oh my God, I said that to you. So it's just taught me a lot about forgiveness and faith. And if there's a third F, that would have been cool, but there wasn't.
I found the same thing. I mean, I never wanted to have this disease and I still don't, but at the same time I never would have become serious with God or become this close to him. And it's just like during that time when you're so sick, you realize what's really important. And with me and with what you said, it wasn't what we thought it was when we were healthy and just took all of that for granted.
It is like when I got sick, and when you get to a point where you realize that this might be it, you just start thinking, wow, all that stuff that I was going to do later, now it's never going to roll back around. And now that I'm actually more well than I thought I ever could be, I have a bucket list. Like before, I'd be embarrassed to, let's say, ride my bike because I'm overweight. I don't give a flying fig. Like, I am healthy enough to be on this bike. Like, I'm going to enjoy my life. It's just hard to fit in with people my age because that's where I am in life. I kind of have that 50-year-old retired mentality. Like, I'm going to live for me. But that's just where I am. I used to get so socially embarrassed and wouldn't do anything for the fear of being embarrassed. Nah, I don't care. So in that aspect, I'm thankful. Like you, I just don't want to take another day for granted because I don't want to live in anxiety that I'm going to get, sicker than what I am now, but I don't ever want to have to say that again to where I'm like, wow, now my chance is gone. I feel like God has given me a second chance. I feel like I'm on a path that He wanted for me, and and I'm not fighting it anymore to do what I want. Um, I lost my train of thought.
No, I found that to be true too. Like, I don't know, it almost feels like a whole new life, like I never lived before, and part of it was being on so many psych meds for so many years, but also just having the disease and sitting there unable to really do anything, and then so much pain, and realizing how much time I wasted on silly things. And like, man, if I ever get better, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm not going to do this. And I'm really glad to have the chance to do that now.
And like going back to where I say I don't fit in, I mean, I don't really care to, but I guess it is kind of hard to strike up a conversation because, like I wasted so much time binge watching TV, laying around on the couch. Like I'm talking about even when I was well enough to like when I went bar hopping and stuff. Quit. Hey, quit. This dog is going to drive me nuts. Hershey, stop. Stop. Sorry, my dog is going on 14 years old and she just acts wonky at night. She's got that sundowners. Sorry, what was I saying?
Talking about even when you were healthy, like going out bar hopping and
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I wasted so much time just, drinking it up, laying around the next day. And now when people are like, have you seen the show such and such? And I'm like, no, I don't really watch TV. I don't, because I don't want to sit around and watch TV. And nothing really gets I don't know, mainstream television just doesn't get my attention. And like, no offense to anybody that watches like the Game of Thrones and stuff, but I I actually find it more entertaining to like read the Bible and study the Bible than to sit down and watch a 30-minute comedy show. And I have a balance. I'm not saying I won't watch it at all, but I'm not going to sit down on Netflix. I would watch, a whole TV series in 2 days. Like, what a waste of time. Like, what did it really do for me?
yeah, I was the same way. And now it's, I mean, you know me, I couldn't even hardly find time to do this, but it's not really that I'm so busy. It's just like I want to be out bird watching, out at the beach, out riding my bike. Just so many things I want to do.
And you're getting it done, spending time with Grams. Oh, Grams. Becca has the sweetest grandma. She always offers me Jello pudding. Or is it Jello salad? Jello salad.
Yeah, Jello salad with nothing in it that you can eat.
I know, but she always offers it. Oh man, she's a sweet lady. So that's all I got to say about that.
Well, did you have anything else you wanted to share, or did you want to wrap it up?
Um, Let me take a look at my book. I literally just looked at the note I made about anytime I wonder about my advocacy isn't working. That's funny because I just mentioned that. But just the fact that most of my healing came from God, getting my mind right, listening to my intuition. Um, there's nights that, my mom was afraid to go to bed because like I couldn't breathe. I'd go to the ER. They would just run blood tests and send me home. There's nothing they could do. So most of, he's watching over me. I think it's cool that Avril Lavigne, I don't think it's cool that she has Lyme disease, but I think it's cool that she's become an advocate. She has a cool song called Head Above Water that she wrote when she thought she was dying, like literally actively dying from Lyme disease. And she sells the shirts that go to her fundraiser. She has a fundraiser now. There's actually celebrities that have Lyme disease that you would never know. David Letterman had or has it pretty much never goes away, so he probably still has it. He brought a tick. I don't remember whose show. It was another late night talk show, but he brought a tick and He's like, okay, what do you got, Dave? He's like, it's a tick. He's like, why do you have it? He's like, this thing made me so sick. So then he went on and told, America that he had Lyme disease. Alec Baldwin, um, he had Lyme disease. That's actually kind of like why he ballooned up so much, being so sick. And his cardiologist, he had to go to a cardiologist. Lyme causes Lyme carditis. Kind of like, I don't know if you ever heard of rheumatic fever, like scarlet fever.
Oh, yeah.
Um, that's caused by streptococcus, but it's still a bacterial caused heart infection where it infects the valves. That's what Alec Baldwin had. And he was out in California, and the cardiologist was like, you don't have Lyme disease. So he even, it just goes to show like disease does not have a preference, wealthy or poor.
I know one more, Bailey of the Barnum and Bailey circus. He got bit by a tick and then died shortly after, and I wonder if that could have been Lyme disease too.
Most likely, because that's what it was supposed to do. I mean, that's how in the textbooks it's described. Like your body and organs start shutting down very quickly. My uncle, had they not found the tick on him, they wouldn't have known what to do. His body was shutting down, and thankfully, with him being in the hospital with the like MRI and stuff, they actually found a spot of cancer on his liver that they were able to remove. So that was divine intervention there. But I also am thankful that he went through it because my family got to see firsthand how critical it was. And that also kind of put me at an advantage for support from my family. I know a lot of people don't get that support. Um, it causes spousal issues. It causes drifts, between family members who say, oh, the doctor said you don't have it. Like, get over it. You're fine. Because my family saw how sick my uncle was. They're like, oh, wow. I didn't know you could have this form. So they know, and I'm thankful for that because if I didn't have a supportive family, man, that's just like an added. I don't know if I would have been strong enough to deal with doctors already telling me that I don't have it, plus no support from my family. You do get to that point, and I have a couple friends who are stuck in this loop. I call it falling through the cracks of the healthcare system, where you're young, you are being either fat shamed or your symptoms are getting blamed on something else. They stop looking and all your tests come back normal, right? So you start to wonder, am I just crazy? Am I just producing these symptoms? And then your intuition's like, no, something's wrong. And it's just sad. You do get to that point where you start questioning your own sanity. Did that happen to you?
I knew something was wrong because you could see it, but I got passed around to all different doctors and specialists. I would go to the endocrinologist and he'd say, well, this is on your skin. You need to see a dermatologist. And the dermatologist would say, well, this happened after your surgery. You need to see your surgeon. And the surgeon said, well, this looks like an allergic reaction. You need to see an allergist. And this took several months and getting worse and worse and worse because I had no idea what was wrong. And then finally, one day, I literally diagnosed myself with a 5-minute Google search. I Googled, why does my face feel like it's on fire? And all these results came up with rosacea, and that's how I got diagnosed. It wasn't by any doctors.
They were all passing the buck. And most of the specialists I saw, right? I didn't get back there until like 2 hours after my appointment time, and I only saw them for 5 minutes. How much of a case history can you get on a person when you only see them for 5 minutes? And they would cut me off. They'd ask me a question. They'd move on to the next question. I was still answering it. Oh man. I just oh
I know the thing was, I mean, at the dermatologist, I said, I think this is rosacea. This fits all the symptoms. And even that doctor, she said, no, I don't think it is because you shouldn't have pain with rosacea, which, if you go in the support groups, there are tons of people who have pain with it. But she had to actually go get the head dermatologist, and she was finally the one who said, yeah, this is a really rare form of it, but it happens. So finally I was able to get treatment, but that took 3 months to work.
That's a very scary thing too when doctors start, they just say it shouldn't, like you shouldn't feel this. Okay, but I do. I mean, just because I don't fit the puzzle piece, like isn't it possible that I'm just one person that experiences it differently? So, like, I forget who that just happened to. They said, I think it was Mitch. Well, you shouldn't feel that way on this medicine. It's pretty rare. I'm like, okay, but what if he's that one in 100 people? You know, at some point, you're gonna be that rare person, aren't you? I don't know. That just
Well, I always am.
I seem to always get the rarest symptoms.
To me, yeah, to me it was just very obvious. Anyone who looked at me, they're like, "Oh my goodness, why is your skin so red? Did you get sunburn?" But it
Yeah.
wasn't, and like they would say, "Wow, you must have a high fever," and I didn't, and like it should have just been so obvious to doctors.
You would think. I wish, and I don't want to just say every doctor is bad, not by any means. And with Lyme disease, it's honestly just ignorance because it's something that they're not taught unless they go into a specialty. And even when they're taught about, when they do go in that specialty, the information is not up to date. Uh, it's kind of scary what they put out there. I think one site said, Lyme disease is rare. It only affects 1 in 3,000 people. It honestly infects there's 300,000 new cases every year. And just this year alone, it's 400,000 cases. So it seems to be going up by 100,000 cases a year. I'm like, this is extremely inaccurate, and we're kind of downplaying it. It is an epidemic. They say to just be concerned if you have the bullseye rash. That's the classic sign of Lyme disease, but only 30% of people get that rash. Um, I don't ever remember having a tick on me, never found a tick on me. Don't know if it was even a tick that did it, but if it did, I never had the rash either. So,
Did you want to say just a little bit about how differently this manifests in children, how this can be like misdiagnosed in children?
yeah, for adults, it's more physical. I mean, you will have the psychological aspect, but for some reason, in children, it's more of a psychological disease. The ADD, ADHD, um, autism, just any type of learning disability should be investigated. Kids are most susceptible, like I mentioned earlier, because they are lowest to the ground and, they play on playgrounds. Ticks will Ticks are in tall grass, and most tick bites happen in someone's own backyard. So we're not talking about, well, I don't go camping. You don't need to go camping. You just need to brush up against grass, and that's all it takes. Or if it's not even a tick, it could be a mosquito. We don't really know. There's not really like actual statistics on that. It's not even widely accepted that other vectors cause it, but there is independent research out there. If a research is independent and not government funded, it's not widely accepted by medicine. That's why it gets discredited. That's why a lot of the Lyme disease stuff, like Columbia University has done a lot of studies, but they've been independent studies, so going to be published in any type of JAMA. Actually, the LymeDisease.org, they did their own study. They sent it into I think it was JAMA, the Journal of American Medical. I can't remember what it stands for, but that's where all the medical articles go. They wanted them to review and they wanted them to edit a lot of things to where the paper just didn't even have the same content anymore. And so they decided not to. And they did it as an independent study. And when they put it as an independent study, it doesn't have any like merit in the medical field.
You had given me a few tips to avoid tick bites. You said like walking through that birding trail to wear long pants and tuck them into my socks. Did you have any other little tips like that for people?
With Lyme disease, it's all about prevention. There's actually some clothing on the market that has insecticide in it that will repel ticks. Anytime you're doing yard work, I highly recommend, even if it's like 90 degrees, wear some type of pant. And I say tuck it into your socks because ticks can only climb upward. So if they're tucked in, they're climbing on top of the clothing to where they can be brushed off. You know, you get a tick under your pant leg, it's climbing up on you, and who knows where it's going to end up. Do look for ticks anytime you come in from being outdoors. Like when I do yard work and I mow, I immediately take a shower when I'm done. That way it gives me a chance to look for ticks or any type of bite or any type of rash. And, just basically that's it. I mean, you don't have to shower if you don't want to, but definitely you want to check for them. It's just, there's really not much other than, the clothing aspect. I mean, you can use repellents, you know, I use essential oils. I don't do the commercial stuff, and that would be a whole other hangout to talk about toxic stuff in commercial products. But you can use sprays. But anytime you're going outdoors on a trail, pants, tuck them into your socks. Um, for children, and this I cringe every time when people take pictures of them in like tall grass, summertime. I'm like, no. I'm like, check your children, check your children, check your children. When you give them a bath, check them. Like it doesn't matter if they've been outside or not. Just just keep checking, just keep looking, just keep swimming.
What kind of essential oils are good for that?
Uh and I forget there's like a couple that are specific that will repel everything. Um I use lemongrass. I used to, right? And then I found out bees love lemongrass. So, but I stick to the basics: citronella, eucalyptus, lavender. Actually, a cedar wood. That's another one that repels most insects.
Okay, well, did you have anything else you wanted to share?
Oh, peppermint. Peppermint pretty much repels a lot of little flying gnats and stuff. I don't know. I've been talking so much. I don't even know what all I've covered and all I haven't. But I mean, I could go on 5 days about all the information. I have even delved into, the political aspect of why things are what they are. But I do want to get to you the links that you can publish on here. And I ask everybody to sign that petition because we don't want that guy on our board making decisions for us when he has testified against our community. It's just like I put on Facebook, it's kind of like a group of chickens having Colonel Sanders sit on a board for them, like shooting yourself in the foot. But I thank you for the opportunity, National Lyme Awareness Month. I hope my fellow advocates are watching And that's all I have to say about that. And I thank everybody for listening to me getting long winded and off track and yelling at my dog.
Well, I really appreciate you doing it, and I enjoyed it. And if you feel up to it sometime, maybe we could do like a Lyme Q&A with the chat.
Yeah, I'd love to. That's something that we had to cut for time purpose, but I'd love to be able to answer people's questions.
Yeah, we'll do that separately and have the chat turned on. The reason I didn't this time is because this is my first hangout, and I didn't have a moderator, so I didn't know about trying to keep up with chat and do this. But if we do like a Q&A, then we'll definitely have the chat on where you can ask questions.
Yeah, and I think it would end up being like an extra hour because then I'm assuming that there's going to be people with a lot of questions, but just me answering, I give a 10-minute response to a simple question.
I do the same thing.
uh, but what are you going to do? Well,
Well,
I'm glad this went better than I thought it was. I was nervous, and I thank everybody for, putting up with my stuttering and stuff.
oh yeah. Well, if any of you have stories of healing or anything like that, feel free to share it in the comments, and I'd like to do more hangouts like this with people. So just feel free to do that, and I'll edit the description of this and put in those links she talked about. And I just thank you all so much for listening. And if you're out there and you have any kind of disease or whatever going on, just know that there's hope and that there's healing through God. And like I said, I couldn't have even imagined when I took a bunch of pills to try to kill myself how good my life could end up because of him. So just hang in there and have hope. All right, well, that's all for now.
I like to add one thing.